We began with the latest developments from the United Nations General Assembly, where Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that President Donald Trump could change the course of the conflict with Russia, adding that Washington is in fact prepared to offer Ukraine security guarantees once the war comes to an end.
Trump is a game changer by himself if he will be sure in Ukraine, and I think that he is more close now to this situation, and that's why, and between us, only Trump can. For today, we know some not too much players in the world who can be game changers, but he's the most closer to this.
President Zelensky made these remarks to journalists after the meeting with President Donald Trump on the sidelines of the UN General Assembly in New York. His comments came shortly after Trump himself delivered an unusually upbeat assessment of Ukraine's prospects, writing on Truth Social that Russia was facing what he called a big economic trouble and that Ukraine, with the backing of Europe and NATO, could be in a position to win back all of its territory. In his post, President Trump said that Russia's fighting in Ukraine is making the country look like a paper tiger.
With time, patience, and the financial support of Europe and, in particular, NATO, the original borders from where this war started is very much an option. Why not? Russia has been fighting aimlessly for 3.5 years, a war that should have taken a real military power less than a week to win. This is not distinguishing Russia. In fact, it is very much making them look like a paper tiger.
The Kremlin on Wednesday rejected President Trump's claim that Russia was a paper tiger, saying the economy was stable, though conceding there were some problems with growth. It also said there's no alternative for Russia than to continue its offensive in Ukraine. And Trump's recent post marks a shift in his previous stance, which suggested that Kyiv might have to consider giving up land in order to secure peace, a position that's raised concerns in Ukraine about possible back-channel talks legitimizing Russia's occupation. Now, for Zelensky, Trump's latest remarks signal what he called a big shift in Washington's position. And he said the meeting with the U.S. president had been positive, even though he couldn't share all the details.
My impression was good of conversation, and I was positive about understanding. I'm not president of the United States. I can't tell you that President Trump will do everything what we want or what we need. I don't know. But he was looking positively on the topics, what we shared, and on influence these topics on the way to peace, and on real deep meaning of all these cases, what we shared. If it is difficult to explain in English, when I don't want to share everything, and that's why I'm trying to explain, sorry.
Zelensky also stressed the influence China's stance can have on the war, emphasizing that if Beijing truly wanted the fighting to stop, it could exert pressure on Russia's President Putin.
If China truly wanted this war to stop, it could compel Moscow to end the invasion. Without China, Putin's Russia is nothing. Yet too often, China stays silent and distant instead of active for peace.
Now, speaking at a Security Council session, Zelensky and his allies pressed Russia to halt its invasion and return to negotiations. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said President Trump has invested tremendous time and energy in trying to broker a settlement, but he went on to say that Trump's patience was not infinite. The UN Secretary General, too, addressed the situation, saying that peace efforts have been moving very slow.
The president is a very patient man. He's very committed to peace, but his patience is not infinite. And as he has said repeatedly, he has before him the opportunity and the options of imposing additional economic costs on the Russian Federation, if necessary, in order to bring this to an end.
But progress on a much-needed ceasefire and a lasting peaceful settlement remains painfully slow. Every day of continued fighting undermines the chances for diplomacy to succeed and increases the dangers of further escalation.
Now, meanwhile, China's ambassador to the UN said that the country has been holding an impartial position since the conflict began.
President, since the first day of the crisis, China has been upholding an objective and impartial position. calling for a ceasefire and cessation of hostilities, and advocating for peace talks towards a political settlement. Guided by the four truths put forward by President Xi Jinping, we have maintained close communication with parties concerned, sent our special envoys for shuttle diplomacy, and together with Brazil and other countries of the Global South, initiated the Group of Friends for Peace in order to consolidate a cause for peace, promote consensus on peace and advance peace efforts.
Now, Moscow, however, rejected the idea that the meeting between Trump and Zelensky meant any real shift. Russia's deputy ambassador to the UN dismissed the statements made by the Western leaders, accusing them of recycling rhetoric that he said had nothing to do with peace.
It is very much lamentable that the membership of the Security Council has been compelled today to spend time and be present at a meeting which was initiated by our European colleagues purely to mark the latest New York stop on a tour of the well-known former actor. And here we see squeezed in is during the subway at rush hour, where we hear and will continue to hear mere replicated statements which have nothing to do with the truth. There is no added value for the establishment of peace in Ukraine.
Still, only time will tell if the latest words by President Trump signal a turning point, or will we get an about-face once again from the president?
Firstpost now available in 9 languages on YouTube. English,
$36 trillion.
French,
Le FMI, comme
German,
Geschäftsführenden Direktor,
Hindi,
$30 trillion kakarjo.
Indonesian,
Pemerintah tanpa pemeriksaan.
Italian,
Sekali radikali.
Japanese,
4 兆ドル以上も
Portuguese,
por causa do próprio balanço patrimonial.
Spanish.
Beautiful bill.
Go to Settings, click on Audio Track and select the language of your choice. Be the first to know what's happening around you in your first language. Firstpost.